So, welcome everyone back to the Bhakti course. Today we'll be doing session 2. For those of you who are not here last course, we did cover a lot of the history of Bhakti and the tradition. We talked about Bhakti being found in the Vedas, which are some of the oldest revealed books of knowledge in the world. The Vedas comprise many different departments of knowledge. Health, that's called Ayurveda. There's knowledge of astronomy, astrology, politics, mathematics, language, pretty much anything you can imagine about life. And then the most important branch of the Vedas deal with spiritual knowledge, which is called the Vedanta, or the end of the Vedas. So we just touched a little bit on that last session. I won't go through it again now, but if you did not get to see that session, please do take a look. It's very eye-opening, very fascinating. And as you will see, it lends a depth of authenticity to this spiritual practice in terms of the great heritage and tradition it comes from. So today we'll continue here with our second session. We're going to talk a little bit more about how the Vedas explain Bhakti. We can see here Bhakti is primarily and perhaps most forcefully developed in the Bhagavad Gita. So for those of you who are not familiar with, the Gita is considered the great epic or the holy book of India, of Hinduism. The Bhagavad Gita is literally meaning the song of the divine, the song of the supreme. So it's written in Sanskrit, and it details a number of topics, and especially it dives into yoga and meditation. And that's kind of what many people are interested nowadays. Many people are doing yoga. When we dive into the Gita, actually, we learn about the authentic yoga and the different types of yoga that are out there. And what most people are generally practicing today is just one branch of a whole greater yoga system. So today we'll dive a little bit into that as well. And I'll begin with just a short invocation, which invokes auspiciousness. Before we begin any type of spiritual discussion, we usually chant a few mantras. These help us kind of put our consciousness in the right place, in a receiving mode, because the wisdom of the Vedas is very powerful. And if we can be in the right state of consciousness, it can really act on us, and we can experience greater clarity, greater enlightenment, greater happiness, greater fulfillment in life. These three words, Om Tat Sat, it's an invocation to the absolute truth, which is mentioned itself in the Bhagavad Gita. So let's take let's advance a little bit here in this and understand what is yoga. Let me just remove a notice here. Okay, yoga, a general definition of yoga means to link our consciousness with the supreme absolute truth. So the Vedas explain there's different methods of doing this. And any practice you take up to link your consciousness, this is where the word yoga comes from. In Latin, we have yukt, to yoke. It's coming from the Sanskrit yoga, which is literally connecting our consciousness with the supreme consciousness. So that process, you can give it whatever name you want. In different religions and different traditions, it will have a different name. But this is what's going on. We're trying to connect our individual consciousness with the higher consciousness that exists. So from this definition, we understand the path of yoga is universal. It's not that Hindus only do yoga. Any type of spiritual practice you're doing is a form of yoga. But this is very important to understand as we grow spiritually, to be able to respect other traditions and not develop this kind of egocentric, self-centered view, closed-minded view that our path is the only path. This is sectarianism, and this is a cause of a lot of destruction in spirituality and in religion in the world. Any spiritual practice you take up can be seen from a universal objective point of view as helping us be in tune with the higher stage of consciousness. So from the Vedic point of view, we have something called Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, and Upasana Kanda. The Vedas, as we mentioned, being the original books of knowledge, some of the oldest preserved knowledge on the planet. It explains how you can work and have that be a form of yoga, just by doing your work, your job. How you can do your job and make that a form of spiritual upliftment. This is called Karma Kanda. And you can see on the right on this yoga ladder, the corresponding type of yoga that one would follow is called Karma Yoga. Karma means activity. So when you do a form of yoga through your activity, you can use your activity to elevate your consciousness. This is called Karma Yoga. We'll discuss more about that. The next type is called Jnana Kanda. That means the portion of the Vedas that deal with empirical knowledge, knowledge of the material manifestation, knowledge of the soul, the yoga of knowledge. To practice that, one will take up the disciplines of Jnana Yoga, which involves studying certain portions of the Vedic knowledge, meditation, and also different physical yoga practices. All these can help one develop their higher consciousness through knowledge. And the final stage of the Vedas is called Upasana Kanda, or worship, which is literally meaning to develop devotion, which is more coming from the heart. We could say symbolically, karma is more of the body, jnana is more of the mind, and bhakti is more of the heart. So it's kind of the deepest level of yoga, and the other yogas are meant to awaken this devotion. Love is the highest principle in the world, and so love becomes the most expedient and effective means in achieving realization of yoga. So that's called Bhakti Yoga, and there's different practices that go along with that as well. Okay. So here we've presented a very interesting yoga diagram, which explains how from the lowest level of consciousness, one can rise to the highest level of spiritual realization. These teachings are extracted from the Gita and from some of our commentaries by great acharya teachers of the Gita, who've explained the subtleties of this yoga path. So on the very bottom, we have something called animal life. And the Vedas explain that the distinction between the animal life and the human life is that the human beings, they can engage in yoga. The animal's body is not yet suitable for developing this type of discipline. So the Vedas explain there's actually 8,400,000 different species of life in this universe. So there's such a wide variety, but the human species, the human form, is the proper vehicle to develop spiritual realization. the human form of life has a more developed intelligence, which can facilitate and allow one to actually take up these yoga practices. That's the unique aspect of human beings. And that's why we see in the world, the human species is the one that's really developed and for better, for worse, radically changing the external world around us. Now, if the human society can be guided by the path of yoga, then they can act for good in the world. But when we neglect this practice, the practice of guided spirituality according to the Vedas, then unfortunately the human society acts as a destructive force in the world. So from animal life, one gets a progressive evolution in bodily form until one comes to the human form of life. So this is the principle of reincarnation, that this is not, let me ask you a question. Who were you before you were born? Well, the Vedas say the soul is ever existent. So it's not that we just popped out of nowhere. No, in the past, we had a different body. We had a different experience. In this life, we're continuing. It's carrying over. So after so many births in the animal kingdom, one takes birth in the human body. Now we achieve this rare gift of a human form, and we can take up the practice of yoga. So from human life, the first stage of yoga practice is karma yoga. And it's included here that prior to that, one is basically just interested in satisfying their gross body. How can I find something that tastes good? How can I find something that looks good? How can I touch something that feels good? How can I smell something? Using these different senses of the body, the whole intelligence is utilized just how to satisfy the gross material senses. So when one is absorbed in that way, one can't really develop spiritually because we're so absorbed in what's called sense gratification, just gratifying our senses. And we can see in this age, a large part of human society is just kind of stuck on this level, just living life to satisfy the senses, which is really neglecting our most important duty, the greatest opportunity actually that we have. So when one can rise from a higher conception, a higher purpose from just satisfying our senses, one takes up karma yoga, which means one accepts a transcendental goal, and therefore one becomes established as a yoga practitioner. When we accept there's a higher goal of my life, the goal is to realize my true self and to realize the nature of this universe and the source of everything, my personal relationship with the source. Then one becomes a yoga practitioner. Now, how I'm going to realize that is going to depend on different things, but the first level is starting with karma yoga. Now, in order to do karma yoga, one has to have some basic knowledge as well, because karma yoga is based on the principle of duty. In Sanskrit, it's dharma. So one has their dharma, their duty in life. A student, they have a certain duty. It's to study, to do well in school. A parent has a certain duty to take care of their child. A worker has a certain duty to their job, etc. Now, these duties are actually prescribed in these ancient Vedic texts. How at any stage of life you have a particular duty, which if you accomplish properly, it will elevate your consciousness. So karma yoga is in reference to this Vedic system, which is called varnashram, how you will execute your duty in life, but you will not do it only for yourself. You will do it as an offering. This is karma yoga. It's my duty to go to school and study well and get a good job. Why? Not just for myself, not just to satisfy my senses, but there's a higher purpose in all of that. Ultimately, the duties that we execute are prescribed in this elevating way. And when we do whatever function we have, not for ourselves, but as an offering to this transcendental system, to the source of everything, then it becomes karma yoga. So in the Vedic paradigm, there are these different sections and qualifications of human beings. For example, we see in our modern world, some people are very intellectual. They're professors, philosophers, scholars. Some people, that's their working nature. Other people are more absorbed in politics or military. Others are absorbed more in agriculture. Others more in handiwork. So everyone has a particular way of working. So when you work according to your nature, you're doing your dharma, your duty. But what are you going to do with that? The results of your work. So karma yoga is offering the results of your work. If I have a job, rather than just working for myself, getting money so I can enjoy, with the results of my work, I offer them to the Supreme. Maybe I give in charity. That's what the picture here is trying to show. Performing and helping society in uplifting ways, donating the fruits of my work to a higher cause, perhaps to a temple, a church, a mosque, a synagogue, etc. Then my work becomes a form by which I elevate myself. So this is karma yoga, and this is described in the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, once one has developed some footing in karma yoga, they're eligible to continue on to the yoga path. And here, from a higher stage of consciousness that develops from that karma yoga, one increases in knowledge. They learn more about who they really are, and they're able to act more in that way. They also develop something called detachment. That means I can do something and not be so absorbed in the result. This can actually bring happiness. If you have a job that's very stressful, but imagine you're able to do it in a detached way without getting stressed. So in life, when you're doing karma yoga, you're more detached because you know that you're doing it for a higher purpose. So whatever results, whatever comes in life, you can deal with it, that this is my karma, this is my destiny, but how can I deal with it in a way that will elevate me and not get so absorbed in it and get so whatever, elated or depressed or anxiety? That's when it's only done for me. When it's done for a higher reason, a higher cause, I can do anything with more detachment because I'm not attracted only to the results for myself. I'm interested in the process of yoga. I'm interested in a higher goal of life. So I'm doing my duty, but I know there's the ultimate supreme goal. That's what I'm interested in. So it awakens detachment, which is an important quality on the spiritual path. Then one can take up the practice of jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge. So what is that? Well, certain portions of the Vedas explain in very, very terse and mystical language the source of everything, which is called Brahman. It's the spiritual energy that pervades everything in creation. And this Brahman is the spiritual reality that prior to the higher stages of realization of yoga, we are ignorant of. We live our whole life not knowing about this spiritual energy that is pervading everything, including our own soul. So certain portions of the Vedas describe the nature of Brahman, spirit. And to meditate on spirit, this is what jnana yoga is. There's a certain portion of the Vedas called the Upanishads, and these explain very fascinating descriptions of how using the mind, the intellect, actually we can develop a spiritual realization. Other practices of Jnana Yoga include meditation. And there's a whole portion of teachings called Ashtanga Yoga. We can see that's the next one going up. Ashtanga means eightfold limb. Ashta, eight, anga is limb. So it's a 8-process yoga system, one of which is Hatha Yoga, which is now what everyone knows as yoga, basically. It means doing your sun salutation, all the different poses. Why? What is the relation of that to the authentic yoga teachings? That is an anga, a limb of the Ashtanga Yoga, which is meant to help get your body fit, physiologically fit, so that you can meditate for extended periods of time. Meditation is not easy to completely control the mind and withdraw it within oneself. Therefore, by practicing Hatha Yoga or these physical seating and exercise postures, your internal physiology becomes more controlled in that your mind is able to be more calm. That's actually the point of this. So this is a further stage of Jnana Yoga wherein you can actually begin to meditate. And through meditation, you can actually develop realization. So we can see going up this Ashtanga Yoga can lead to either Brahman realization or Paramatma realization. You'll notice also from Jnana Yoga, one can also develop Brahman realization. Again, Brahman means spirit. So this all-pervading spirit, this is the nature of God as the all-pervading, undivided, uniform, very subtle spiritual energy. It's called Sat. You've perhaps heard these words, Sat Chit Ananda. These are different descriptions of the absolute truth. And the Sat, or the existent reality feature of spirit, is called Brahman realization. Sometimes we hear about when people are dying, they see a great white light. This is like the Brahman. It's a form of God as an impersonal energy. Now, from the platform of Ashtanga Yoga, there's this dotted line which is signaling what's called mukti or liberation. So the Vedas tell us there's different goals of life: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. There's your duty, there's enjoyment, there's earning wealth, and there's ultimate liberation. So liberation, being the ultimate goal of life, has different forms. Brahman is an impersonal form of liberation. Now, the other level is called Paramatma. Atma means the soul. So the Paramatma realization is the realization of God within our heart. The Paramatma, the supreme soul. That's what we're talking about, this source of everything, known as Paramatma. So through Ashtanga, through advanced meditative process, one can actually realize Paramatma. And that's considered a higher understanding of the absolute truth. And it's not, you can't see here on the screen, but the topmost is actually called Bhakti Yoga. So from where that Paramatma realization, that arrow going to the very top, that says Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga, or devotion, that begins from the level of Paramatma realization, and above that, the arrow, it leads to what's called Bhagavan realization, which is the personal nature of God. Not just impersonal, not just within us, but transcendental personality of the absolute truth. This is how different levels of spiritual consciousness can be achieved through the different yoga processes. Now, this Bhakti Yoga is described in chapters 7 through 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, and it's described as the yoga of devotion, devotional yoga. What does that mean? That means that we are the individual soul, the Atma, and our constitutional position is actually to surrender what's called Sharanagati, or to understand our relation with the source. That act of devotion is bhakti. So there's different methods of doing that. Fixing one's consciousness, hearing, that's called shravanam, hearing descriptions of the absolute truth, chanting, that's called kirtan, chanting mantras, chanting devotional songs which awaken love for the absolute truth, and ultimately what's called sadhana, which is your spiritual practice meant to arouse or awaken pure love. All the great traditions of the world speak about this being the highest goal, pure love for the Supreme. So sadhana is mentioned in the Bhakti texts, how we can awaken this joyful spiritual experience, where spiritual life is not something dry, it's not something boring, where you go and you may fall asleep in the sermon or something. It's a very jubilant, actually ecstatic experience where one feels very much blissfully enlivened, and that is then expressed through chanting, dancing, etc. So this is considered the final phase of the yoga ladder. And you can see in pictures here, this system has been very, very deeply developed in what's now known as India, where the considered the motherland of this yoga tradition. And there's been a bhakti renaissance in the past few hundred years of spreading throughout the whole world, actually. So that's why books like Bhagavad Gita, which is a bhakti text, are even known all over the world now and in most major universities, etc. So this bhakti in the Gita, we're kind of winding down now, concluding. There's a few texts that give description of what is this bhakti. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam me vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. So discovering this supreme that's within us, the source of everything, and actually is like our lost connection. It's like a lost link that when we don't have it, we don't feel complete, right? We feel so much depression, so much suicide, so much drug use, so much abuse. Why? People are not feeling fulfilled in life. They're feeling a lack. So yoga means this connection, reconnecting. And this is bhakti. Sarva dharman parijagya mamekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami ma shuchaha. Now, interestingly, this is one of the last instructions of the Gita. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. So every culture generally has some form of religion, but the highest teaching of bhakti is actually you should abandon that religion. What? Just surrender unto me, because that is the real purpose of religion. Sometimes we get caught up in the religiosity itself, and it actually becomes an obstacle to realizing the original point of that religion. So the essence of religion is this surrendering process. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions, do not fear. All bad karma will be wiped out by this devotional approach. And there's a whole system of practices of bhakti, which we will be continuing to explain in future sessions. This is a picture of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is one of the most renowned proponents of bhakti yoga in the whole world. So he's seated here with a mala or chanting beads in his right hand. So this chanting using a string of meditation beads, chanting mantras, names of the absolute truth. This is considered the highest form of meditation, actually. It's called japa yoga, or mantra meditation. And we'll get into that in the future, but this is joyful yoga. This is not there's some portions of the scriptures which describe people going into a hot sun in the summer in India, meditating under fire. This is not bhakti. That's kind of severe austerity. But bhakti is a joyful yoga. It's very practical. You can do it if you're working a job, if you have a family, in any country, any part of the world. And actually, it's very blissful. It creates this intense feeling of happiness and joy within. So this is a very brief description of bhakti in the Bhagavad Gita and a little more about the general gist of the yoga system and where the bhakti platform is located in relation to other yoga systems. So thank you all so much for joining live, and anyone else who may watch this. Please do stay tuned, and we'd like to see if anyone has questions now or comments, you can please do so.
I don't have any questions for now, but I will ask you on Instagram later, maybe.
Yeah, if you think of anything, and if you would like to start reading the Bhagavad Gita, or become, more connected with some of these things, just let me know. I can connect you with online ebooks, other videos. There's so much out there. So it's really like a whole world of wisdom.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for joining again. I'm just kind of a small time Instagram person, and I thought I would see if people were interested to learn more about this. A few people were, but you seem to be the only one who's really taken the initiative so far to join. So we'll see how it goes, but I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you too.
Okay, and what should I call you?
Um, you can call me Sirach. It's my
Sirach?
real name, birth
Okay.
name.
Okay, you got it. Thank you so much, Sirach. I hope it was interesting for you.
Definitely.
Okay, we'll be in touch.
Yeah.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.